Have you ever felt it? That unsettling sensation that someone is watching you. You turn around, but there's no one there. You tell yourself it's just your imagination, yet the feeling lingers. Emma knew that feeling all too well. It was a morning like any other. The city buzzed with its usual energy. Cars honking, people rushing to their destinations, and the scent of fresh coffee lingering in the air. Emma blended in with the crowd, a part of the daily rush. As she walked, she caught her reflection in a coffee shop window. She paused, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, but then she saw it. The reflection of the people passing by was clear. All of them, except for one man, a man standing directly behind her. He was there in the crowd, but his reflection was missing. Emma frowned, turning around quickly, but the man was gone. He had vanished into the sea of faces before she could make sense of it. Shaking off the unease, she continued her commute, convincing herself that it was just a trick of the light. Later that day, Emma found herself in the lobby of her office building. The mirrored walls reflected the busy crowd moving in and out. She took a moment to check her appearance, straightened her blouse, adjusted her hair. Then she noticed it again. A man standing directly behind her, close enough that she should have felt his presence. Yet in the mirror, there was nothing, just the empty space where his reflection should have been. Emma's heart raced as she spun around, but the man had disappeared, just like before. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up, a shiver running down her spine. Who was he? And why couldn't she see him in the mirror? The questions haunted her throughout the day, gnawing at her curiosity. By the time she boarded the subway that evening, she was on edge, scanning the faces of the passengers, searching for that man. The train was packed, as usual. Businessmen with their briefcases, students with headphones, mothers cradling their children. And there he was, at the far end of the carriage, standing completely still, staring right at her. Emma's breath caught in her throat. He was the same man, tall, nondescript, yet impossible to ignore once she'd noticed him. No one else seemed to see him. People moved around him like he wasn't even there. Emma pushed through the crowd, determined to confront him. Her heart pounded in her chest, each step heavy with anticipation. But as she reached the spot where he had stood, he was gone. The train doors opened, and she hesitated before stepping out onto the empty platform. It was quiet, the usual hum of the city strangely muted. And then she saw him again, waiting at the far end of a narrow, dimly lit alley. Emma's feet carried her forward before she could think, her curiosity overpowering her fear. She stepped into the shadows of the alley, the light from the street fading behind her. The man turned to face her, his expression calm, almost kind. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. "Why are you following me?" The man tilted his head, regarding her with a look that felt almost sad. "It's not me who's been following you," he said, his voice echoing strangely like it came from somewhere far away. "It's what's been following us." Emma's brow furrowed. What could he possibly mean? But before she could question him further, the shadows around them began to ripple, as if the darkness itself were alive. The man raised his hand and the shadows twisted and morphed, forming a dark, humanoid shape. A creature emerged from the void, its limbs elongated, its face obscured by swirling tendrils of darkness. Emma stumbled back, her eyes wide with terror. "What is that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The man stepped between her and the creature, his hand emitting a bright, protective light. The shadow creature recoiled, letting out a piercing, unearthly screech. "It's the reason I'm here," the man said calmly. "It's what I've been keeping at bay. But tonight, it's stronger." Emma's mind raced. Everything felt surreal, like she had stepped into a nightmare she couldn't wake from. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice breaking. "What are you?" The man turned to her, his face softening, almost human now. "I'm your guardian, Emma. From another world, sent to protect you from what lurks in the dark corners of this one." Emma's breath hitched. "Why me?" she asked, her voice small, like that of a child seeking comfort. He gave her a sad smile. "Because you're special. You've always been special, but now that you've seen me, the barrier is broken. It will keep coming for you." The shadows grew darker, the creature's form becoming more solid, more real. The man looked back at Emma, urgency in his eyes. "You have to trust me," he said. "I can keep you safe, but you can't look for me again. If you do, it will find you." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes, a mix of fear and sadness she couldn't quite understand. "Will I ever see you again?" she whispered. He reached out, almost touching her cheek, but stopped himself. Not if I do my job right, he said softly. And with that, he stepped back, letting the shadows swallow him whole. The creature disappeared along with him, leaving Emma standing alone in the dark alley, the city's noise rushing back in like a wave. From that day on, Emma never saw him again. But every now and then, she felt it, that fleeting sensation of being watched, of a presence lingering just out of sight. One day, she stood at a crowded intersection, the sun setting behind her, casting long golden shadows on the pavement. She glanced into a shop window and saw him, a brief reflection standing behind her, smiling softly. She turned around quickly, but he was gone, vanished into the sea of people. Emma smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. She knew he was still there, watching over her from the shadows, protecting her from the unseen dangers of the world, and she was no longer afraid.